With that out of the way, live service unfortunately is both a perk and a crutch. It is both a cigarette and an apple.
The live service model was the reliable earner for a while, but it is currently dying, if not already dead. It was admittedly a much more cunning and longer-lasting money-making scheme than Atari's idea to release 9,000 Pac-Man rip-offs, a game players could theoretically play infinitely.
Hello everyone. Games as a service, depending on the types of games that you play, elicits a polarizing reaction from the majority of the player base. Either it's a new game that you or your friends are eager to try out or get sucked into the world building and mechanics the game offers, or it's something that only brings out nothing but misery at the sight of seeing yet another game trying to compete for your time. In layman's terms, these types of games have a multiplayer focus, but to keep the player base engaged, the developers are continually expanding the game. With every new update, there is new lore to read up on, there are whole new areas to explore, and even your favourite weapon or character may have had their mechanics buffed or nerfed. Developers and publishers see the big bucks in live service games. They are lucrative for monetization and retention of the player base. It's a high risk, but it carries a great reward. So it's no wonder why we see so many of these live service games being shipped every year. But it's also important not to forget that the most important aspect of a game is its respect for the player's time. Something that a lot of live service games are starting to forget. There are only so many people who are going to sink hours into a multiplayer game after a tough day's work, and not to mention, there are way too many games offering a litany of content updates and cosmetics to keep players hooked. By the design of a live service game, a person can only commit to playing one live service game. Anything more than that, and the commitment to these games would be all over the place. It is of little surprise that games that began development around 5 or 6 years ago, looking to emulate the success of Fortnite, Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, Sea of Thieves, and GTA Online are now releasing in an environment that has drastically changed. Gamers already have a whole host of established, multiplayer-focused live service titles to dip their teeth into, but newer titles that have yet to prove themselves already have a huge mountain to climb to even attract a consistent player base. And even before these games release, failure turns out to be the fate for many of these games. We have two recent examples to go over. Both of these games have not been released yet, but they are a litmus test to the sustained survival of the live service genre, and from general reception so far, this litmus test seems to have been a failure. Take the recent reveal of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League as a good barometer for public opinion of live service titles. Rocksteady were coming off the back of 3 highly successful Batman games. Arkham Asylum broke the mold from your typical licensed game back in the days of 2009 with its ingenious puzzle design, engaging narrative, and not to mention, the combat was amazing. Although I myself didn't finish the game back then, I enjoyed it for what it was, a solid superhero action game that laid the groundwork for its sequels, 2011's Arkham City and 2015's Arkham Knight, and it has even influenced equally successful titles in the same genre, such as Marvel's Spider-Man. Because Rocksteady had not shipped a game in 8 years, the expectations were super high for Suicide Squad. How could you go from Arkham Knight to what was shown off in that gameplay showcase? Suicide Squad had a litany of glaring problems that many people knew all too well. Much of the gameplay that was demonstrated in last month's State of Play felt like a departure from the Arkham combat that was universally praised. It is something that only served to show that the game was done with design by committee. The instant I watched Harley Quinn just shoot a bunch of generic enemies with purple weak spots whilst she was jumping around like Spider-Man, I was certainly not convinced that this game would ever be a success. Every one of the main characters did not have a single unique aspect to the combat at all. King Shark, for instance, he fires a machine gun with that same aerial combat. It also fails hilariously with its gunplay, because every enemy in that trailer seemed to be a bullet sponge over and over. There was no impact, weight, or force to the guns, alongside some slapstick sound design too. It also might seem that I am pushing it a fair bit, but the visuals, coming off of Arkham Knight, looked unremarkable. The world design, alpha effects, character models, they just don't seem to light up in the way as Rocksteady's previous titles. The comments section of the gameplay reveal showcase trailer was even more brutal in response. cutscenes look more exciting and interesting than the gameplay. We had to wait another 8 years for a Rocksteady game, and we got this? The combat looks about as intense as watching paint dry, and as impactful as hitting someone with a paper bag. Honestly, my excitement for this game has dropped so much today. It looks like just another third-person shooter. Perhaps the biggest stab in the back was the fact that Suicide Squad featured all the hallmarks of bad live service design, gear power levels, which are like the ultimate deciding factor for how your combat is managed, making the gameplay experience more of a sluggish grind, and a battle pass with free items and paid cosmetics. The latter is more insulting because this is like a single player title. I have no problem with a battle pass in multiplayer games, but this is a big ask, especially for a game that costs £70. After that initial cost, you also have to spend more to get the most out of that game. The final insult has to be the fact that the game is always online.
You serious?
You need an internet connection to play, even when you're playing the single player mode. This is bad for a myriad of reasons. First of all, there's a single player mode, really need an internet connection to play. Surely you can just play without the need to be connected, unless they're blatantly willing to keep it so that you need the gear points and battle pass to sync with the servers. Also, I am firmly of the belief that an always online connection for single player games is detrimental to the preservation and longevity of the game. Once the servers inevitably get switched off, you won't even be able to play it at all. Game preservation has become a big topic for the last 2 years, considering that the video game industry hasn't yet taken it seriously, though controversies such as the failed PS3 and PS Vita store shutdowns and the PlayStation CMOS issue have given the topic attention. Games should be accessible regardless of the time they have been released, so that entire new audiences many years down the line will be able to rediscover these titles someday. A live service model prevents this, and it's for these reasons why Suicide Squad will have a hard time when it releases in May. Oh, wait. They delayed it this year. Delayed it this year. For polish.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
We now go over to what happens when the company that churns out the same type of game over and over and over again with little innovation or change in the core type of gameplay being offered, and when that formula begins to run out of steam, they begin to rely on the live service model to rekindle their dwindling fortunes. It's a very polarising results. We are talking about Ubisoft here because they have become a victim of their own success. After years of inducing sequelitis on the most successful franchises, such as Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Far Cry to name a few, Ubisoft has been having a tough time as of late. One of their big releases was supposed to bridge this huge gap in their release schedule, whilst also adhering to Ubisoft's new approach in prioritising live service games. I guess they didn't learn from Hyperscape? Or Roller Champions? Enter Skull and Bones. I do not want to go too much into detail regarding Skull and Bones, but its mere existence came out of a desire to expand the pirate-themed gameplay featured in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And we certainly saw some of that in the gameplay that was featured when it was revealed a few years ago, around 2017, 2018. Although the game that's supposed to release this year is a completely different title to what was initially revealed. The initial concept of huge naval battles and controlling your own ship was completely neutered into something that nobody even wanted in the first place. The fact that this game is incredibly centered on the live service approach, while stepping away from what made Black Flag's naval gameplay so good begs the question, what's the point? There's not really much I can add besides the fact that the gameplay looks janky, unengaging, alongside enabling the worst mechanics in some of Ubisoft's most recent titles. The comment section in the gameplay reveal trailer is equally lukewarm when you think about it. I can't wait till they release the video detailing the loot boxes, cooldown timers, in-game currency, battle passes, pay to upgrade, bait and switch, pay to win game mechanics. I'm so excited! Love the part where you can put an armoured plate around your ship. Historically accurate, I like that. This game looks like a polished indie game that would have been released 10 years ago. And the reason for its continued existence? Ubisoft secured grants from the Singaporean government to fund the development of Skull and Bones. It has severely cost them $120 million to develop the game over the last decade, a figure that will unlikely be recouped given the lukewarm reception to the game, and it has been delayed multiple times. To think that this game was going to release in the same week as God of War Ragnarok, which I thought was amazing, and Sonic Frontiers.
No, I did not lie. I spoke the truth about Sonic Frontiers. It was a return to form for Sonic, and I'll stand by that. Even if millions cried, I would do it again.
Then the game was delayed to March 2023, and after a brutal earnings call where Ubisoft had to cancel 4 unannounced games, it's been delayed indefinitely. Yes, it might be given more time to develop in that sense, but when taking all of the issues with its gameplay and its live service nature into account, it's very doubtful the game will do well. If these games are a litmus test for how AAA live service titles will perform in the future, then it's not exactly doing quite well, and we've certainly seen the bubble burst already. In the space of a few months, developers have had to contend with the oversaturation of the live service genre by reluctantly shutting down their game servers with the lack of players. Rumbleverse only existed for like 6 months when it was announced that the game was going to be switched off by the end of February. I forgot the game existed before they closed it, and I also forgot to try it out before they closed the servers. Babylon's Fall, which is easily Platinum Games' worst title by far, it closed its doors after like barely 11 months of release. Knockout City, a game that had the backing of EA before the developer opted to self-publish the game and convert it to free-to-play, it's closing by June. Fortunately, I have to give them credit. They actually did have the foresight to keep the game going with private servers on PC at least. The same couldn't be said for Crossfire X, a title that Microsoft was excited to announce as an Xbox exclusive back in E3 2019, only for them to distance themselves from it when the game actually released to a whole host of problems including broken matchmaking, unbalanced gameplay, and controls that were awful even for an FPS title on console. That game is switching off the servers in May, and to add insult to injury, the entire single-player campaign will be inaccessible. And even if a failed live service game is lucky enough to survive having a server shutdown, seasonal updates already demonstrates that writing is on the wall. Case in point, Marvel's Avengers and Back 4 Blood. Both games received an open beta for everyone to try out, and almost immediately the hype disappeared. Having played both games, Marvel's Avengers felt unfocused and repetitive. The loot system didn't work. The grind for better items and abilities was soul-sucking at worst. What happened to that game? Not only are content updates done alongside shutting down the in-game store, the entire game is getting delisted by the end of September. Back 4 Blood looked alright, but after playing it for a bit, you could just tell that it was trying hard to emulate Left 4 Dead with very little of what made that game so good. The gunplay did not feel as if there was some force or impact, and the card system was confusing. They've essentially given away this game for free on both Game Pass and PS Plus Extra, and after 2 big content updates, Turtle Rock Studios moved on to their next big game. Hopefully it isn't another failed multiplayer game next time round. For myself personally, I don't have a problem with the idea of live service titles. I myself play a lot of Modern Warfare 2 with my friends. That game is a blast, and I occasionally dip into the likes of Fortnite and a few other live service games every now and then. I don't fully commit to these types of games though. As long as I'm having fun with them, that's what means a lot to me and my friends. The idea of constantly evolving a live service game and updating it with new content and cosmetics is enticing. However, live service games have become the new cash cow that every big developer and publisher is trying to chase after, with middling results at best and disastrous results at worst. We don't really need more live service games. The genre is oversaturated, and we definitely do not need them to creep into games with an established single player element alongside milking the monetization. Will the trend die? No. But I'd imagine developers, they will take a risk-averse approach to avoid their future games from being swamped with oversaturation of live service titles. The next few releases I mentioned earlier in this video, there will be a big test for all involved as to whether big AAA live service games are worth the high risk they offer, but even so, the live service bubble has burst. and there are more games that will fall in the future. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content that I'm bringing to you, then leave a like or comment or even subscribe to the channel. It's really appreciated. And I hope to bring these kinds of videos more often soon in the future. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching.